Hey, what's going on, guys? It is finally June, and June is my absolute favorite month to target walleyes here in northern Wisconsin. They're shallow, they're hungry, and it's an absolute blast to catch these fish. So I'm going to give you my top 3 presentations for June walleyes, as well as my top 3 locations to find these walleyes in June. So let's get started and stick around to the end, because I'm going to give you a little bonus tip on some really special walleye fishing that happens this time of year. All right, let's talk locations. Number 1 location is green weeds. If you can find those new green weeds coming up in the springtime, especially isolated patches and especially a little bit deeper patches than the surrounding area, if you can find those weed extensions going out into just a few feet deeper than anywhere else, that's going to hold walleyes this time of year. It's a great place to slip bobber, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but green weeds are my number 1 whenever I'm looking for walleyes in June. Number 2 is rock. Walleyes especially like rock in low light conditions, so morning and evening and at night, rock is definitely a great place to go. Those same places that you're finding smallmouth spawning earlier in late May and early June, those places are going to hold walleyes as well, especially in low light. So these walleyes in the spring like to roam big sand flats and also grass flats, or if you're in a reservoir, if there's wood. This time of year is the only time of year where you see walleyes really using shallow flats. They're going to go out deeper and use those deep flats later, but early in the spring they love big expansive flats. There's a lot of food up there, and that water's a little bit warmer, and it's a great place to kind of cover some ground and catch some fish that way. So definitely check those out. Now, as far as presentations, my number 1 go-to in June, anywhere I fish where there's good structure that's holding those walleyes in an area like those green weeds or those rock piles, is a slip bobber. A slip bobber and a leech is absolutely amazing for walleyes the whole month of June. And my basic setup is just a nice long rod, 7 foot to 8 foot rod, so you got control of that slip bobber. This is the St. Croix Slip and Rig Icon series. It's designed for basically rigging and slip float fishing, and the long rod helps you just control that float a little bit better with that longer leader on there, and gives you a nice bow in the rod to hold those fish once you hook them. And my main line, I'll use either monofilament or braid. I'm going to put my little knot and my bead and my float. Then I'm going to put a little sliding 1/8 ounce sinker on there, a swivel, and then my 6 or 8 pound leader here. And I'll either tie that to a jig if I want a little more control and get that bait right down below the float right away, or oftentimes if I'm fishing really clear water, I'm going to use a sinker and a number 6 or 8 octopus hook, and that is a little bit more stealthy presentation. It floats around in the water a little bit more. So those are my 2 slip float rigs that I'll use in June. And if there's too many panfish, they're picking off my leeches, I'll often go with a minnow. So I'll use a large fathead or a smaller sucker minnow, and that kind of keeps those panfish off of it, and that really works well. Sometimes they like minnows better than leeches, but oftentimes leeches are the real key, and you want to get the biggest leeches you possibly can. Now, moving on to method number 2, that's jigging. This is one of the best times of the year to pitch jigs up shallow in those weeds, on those rocks, wherever, and you can either use a live minnow, which is a great option if they're finicky, but I really like to throw a jig in a plastic, whether that's a paddle tail or a straight tail worm, a curly tail worm, and I'm just gonna pitch that out along structure and cover ground. It's a great way to fish through an area where you know there's walleyes scattered around weed patches or in an inside turn or on a expansive flat. You can just cover ground, pitch it out there and jig it back and just keep moving along, and it's a great way to catch walleyes in June. Now, my number 3 technique is going to be actually trolling. Trolling works great, especially morning and evening, and you can cover tons of ground, like when those fish are on the flats. Anytime there's a big area that you want to cover, get those crankbaits diving down about 10 feet and just cover ground. And you don't even need boards this time of year, especially in darker water, stained water, morning and evening, low light conditions. You can just put 1 rod out each side and 1 out the back, get some crankbaits that dive about 10 feet, and you can catch walleyes all day. So there you go, guys. There's my top 3 presentations, my top 3 locations to catch walleyes in June. Now that bonus tip that I was going to tell you about. So in June, walleyes move really shallow at night, and they are very catchable. They'll move up into 2 or 3, 4 feet of water at night, especially on rock. Rock is like a magnet for them at night. It holds the heat, and those fish push up there and they feed all night long. So my favorite way to catch them is to throw some sort of bait that makes a lot of vibration that I can reel in on a straight retrieve. So that's paddle tail swim baits, stick baits and crank baits, anything that's got vibration that they can feel and sense. Now I don't want to reel those baits in on an erratic retrieve at night because it makes them hard to track for those walleyes. So I'm going to just steadily crank them in, maybe drop them to the bottom once in a while like a paddle tail, thump bottom, and then just crank them in nice and slow roll so those fish can track them down and eat them. And just fish real shallow rock. That's a great way to do it. You can also troll at night with shallow running stick baits and boards up on some of these rock flats next to deep water, and those fish will move up out of that a little bit deeper water and get real shallow at night. It's a great way to catch fish. So there's your bonus tip. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll leave another video right here. Make sure you subscribe. Thanks again. Get hooked up.